Well, you remember we left off, boys and girls, with what were they doing? Do you remember?
Building sandcastles.
They were building a sandcastle, and as far as they got first on the first day, because they didn't really, know what they were doing, and so they had built a nice platform. It was about this tall, and it was way big because there was 3 of them, and so they all had ideas on what to do. They remember that Mama Piggy, she Googled on the phone, and she said, okay, look at these different pictures here. So they all had a different idea of what they wanted their sandcastle to look like. So the platform was pretty doggone big. Well, they ate breakfast, and they got their little swim trunks on, and they got their old swim trunks on because they were going to work today. They didn't need to wear their pretty new ones. And they go down to the ocean, and Mama Piggy, she brought her chair, and she was going to sit there and watch them. And so she sits down. She got the chair all nice and pretty, and she sat down in the chair, and here they come running up to her, all excited, and said, Mommy, 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 oh my gracious sakes, you got to come and see this. Something's happened. And so she gets up from the chair, and she walks over to where the platform was. Somebody last night had dug a great big round hole in the middle of their platform. Now, the platform was this tall. Do you know how deep that hole was? That hole went all the way down to here.
Oh, no.
So now water was filling up the hole. And they said, what are we going to do? And she said, first of all, you're going to have to fill up the hole, unless that's what you want to design on your sandcastle. Maybe you could have a swimming pool in the middle of your sandcastle. And they said, hey, that's a good idea. Maybe we could do that instead. So they went back and forth, and they decided what to do, and somehow or another, GrandMommy has lost track of the story. Well, no, GrandMommy was going someplace else with the story. So anyway, sorry, boys and girls. They did incorporate this great big hole into their plan. And so Mama Piggy says, why don't we draw this out on a piece of paper? Remember, we tried that last night, but now we have to add to the swimming pool with it. And so she says, okay, here we go. So they took some buckets of sand, and they started building the walls around, and they left open a little bit for the courtyard for the swimming pool so they could go in there. And they're doing so good, and they took a break for lunch, and oh my gracious sakes, Mommy Piggy came down and she said, well, why, you could be sure to build a moat around the castle. Now, do you girls and boys know what a moat is?
Moat. Yes. What is a moat?
Well, a moat is a very deep ditch that turns into a river that goes around your castle, so that when the bad men come in, they can't get into your castle, because you have a drawbridge that comes from the castle. Here's your castle, and here's your drawbridge, and people go up the drawbridge and into the castle. But they can pull that drawbridge up, and here's the moat down here. How are you going to get into their castle with all this water, this river, this ditch running around your castle? Nobody can get in, right? Okay. So, they did. Okay, now the first day is over, and they're going back to their hotel room, and they're going to have supper. And they're all excited about what they did and how much they had done. And oh my gracious sakes, it was looking good. The walls were about this high now. Oh, they were having such a good time. Well, Squiggly got this idea. He says, hey, boys, we can take a stick and we can draw lines outside on the castle like bricks. What a wonderful idea. So they're thinking about it, and they're talking about it, and they're in bed. Next morning, the sun comes in the room, because the sun was, the room in the hotel was facing east, and the sun comes up and wakes everybody up early. And they got up, and they said, we're going to get a head start. They run down to their sandcastle.
Uh-oh.
And guess what they found?
Oh, no.
Yep. Somebody
Uh-oh.
had been at their sandcastle, and they tore one whole wall, one side, one great big wall.
Oh, no.
They tore it down. Well, I don't know who did that. They didn't know who did that. Well, Mommy Piggy said, boys, I want you to stay down here, and I want you to put that wall back up. Don't worry about it. Don't talk to the other boys and girls that's going to be down here building their sandcastles. Just, if somebody says hi to you, you can say hi back to them. If somebody says, what you doing over there? Just say, same thing you're doing, building sandcastles. Mommy is going to go, and I'll be back this afternoon. I'm going to make you sandwiches. Squiggly, do you have the door key in your pocket? Yes, Mama. I got the door key. Okay. Mama's going to be back. And with that, Mommy Piggy goes upstairs. She makes 3 sandwiches real quick. And she calls Mr. Farmer Brown. And she says, Mr. Farmer Brown, you remember that I took the boys to Daytona, and they're having a fun time. They're building a sandcastle. First time they ever built a sandcastle. We had to look it up on Google, but they're doing real good. And we have some problems. And she told Mr. Farmer Brown what the problems were. And he goes, well, you know what, Mama Piggy? I think that perhaps somebody is tearing this down. Somebody that's looking at the pigs and saying, wow, they got a good castle. So, I tell you what we're going to do. She says, well, Mr. Farmer Brown, all I was hoping to do was to have you meet me halfway, because it's a long trip. If you'll meet me halfway and bring the little bad wolf, then maybe the little bad wolf will scare everybody off. I mean, the little bad wolf is a sweet little boy, but he is a wolf, and maybe all the kids will be scared of him, and maybe they'll leave us alone. And Mr. Farmer Brown says, well, I'll do you one better than that, Mrs. Piggy, because you know how I like those 3 boys of yours, Piggly, Wiggly, and Squiggly. They have worked for me. They have helped me. They are just good boys. So I tell you what we'll do. I've been promising Mrs. Farmer Brown a vacation. And what we'll do is we're going to come over and we're going to stay at the hotel with you. I know. And we'll bring the little bad wolf. "Oh, Mr. Farmer Brown, would you do that for us?" And he said, "Of course, Mrs. Piggy. We'll be there as soon as we can." So she hangs up and she goes back down to the beach and she sits down. And Piggly looked and she says, Mama, I thought you were going to go somewhere." She says, "Oh, I did." And she says, "I got a surprise for you, too." "Ooh, what is it?" "Now, Piggly, I have told you time and time again that if I told you what the surprise was, then it wasn't going to be a surprise. Haven't I told you that before?" Well, she sits there and she sits there and they're building and they're building and the walls are getting bigger and the walls are getting bigger. And this little girl over here, she's building a real pretty sandcastle, and her sandcastle was round.
Ooh.
That's different. And then the little boy over here, he was building a pretty good sandcastle, but he kind of kept looking at him kind of funny. And he kept looking at the little girl, and he kept looking at these two boys back over there, and he just kept looking around, and while he was building it, kind of like he just, kind of looking around. And so they were Mama Piggy says, "I think I'm going to watch that little boy." But she didn't tell the pigs. She just she kind of read her book, and she kind of kept looking at him like this, like that. Anyway, so about 4 o'clock that afternoon, here comes two people with their chairs, and their little boy was standing behind them, and they were walking down the big long bridge pier to the beach. And Wiggly looked up and it says, "Oh, that's Mr. Farmer Brown and Mrs. Farmer Brown, and it's a little bad wolf. Oh, it's a little bad wolf." Oh, and they ran up to see them, and they got big hugs and big hugs and big hugs, because Mrs. Farmer Brown, she loved to hug those piggies because they were so fat and juicy and round, and she just loved to hug the piggies. And little bad wolf says, "Hi, Mr. Farmer Brown asked me to come too." And they go, "Oh, how wonderful. That is so much fun. We're going to have such a good time." Well, now, the little bad wolf could not help them because he wasn't signed up to make sandcastles, and it was too late for him to start because the cutoff time was 3 days ago. So nobody else could get into the contest. But little bad wolf could sit there beside the piggies and say, "Oh, I like that. Do that one again on the other side." Or, "Hey, boys, how about building this shape over here?" So, they had help. Well, Mrs. Farmer Brown and Mr. Farmer Brown sat down next to Mama Piggy, and they said, "So who do you think might be doing this mischief at night?" And Mrs. Farmer Brown's, or Mama Piggy says, "Well, I'm thinking it's the little boy over there, but I don't know." And Mr. Farmer Brown says, "Well, I think I'm going to kind of wander around, and I'm going to talk to the boys and girls and just kind of see if anybody else has had some accidents." So off he goes. "Hi, what's your name?" "Oh, my name is Priscilla." "Oh, Priscilla, what a nice sandcastle you have. By the way, Priscilla, has anything ever happened to your sandcastle at night?" She said, "Yeah." She said, "I got up this morning and there was a big hole punched in the side of the wall, and I had to fix it. But I fixed it. See, it was right here, and I fixed it real good." "Well, I'm so sorry to hear that, Priscilla." So he walked on, and the two little boys up here behind Piggly Wiggly and Squiggly, they were twin boys. And their name was Billy and Willie.
That rhymes.
And so he was talking, Farmer Brown was talking to him, and they said, what a nice sandcastle you boys are building. And Billy says, yeah, we're having a good time. Have you ever built a sandcastle before? And Willie says, oh, we are here every year. We wouldn't miss it. Oh, have you built them every year? And they said, yeah. And Farmer Brown says, well, did you ever win a contest? And Willie and Billy said, yes, we did. We won the second year. We were so happy. And so Farmer Brown says, well, let me ask you a question, boys. Do you ever find anything that's been damaged to your sandcastle from the next day? And Billy and Willie said, well, this year, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how come. And I don't know if anybody else's has been damaged too, but ours has been, one time the wall was torn down, and one time we started a moat around the castle, and it was filled in, and we had to dig it all back out again. And that's been hurting us, because that takes up time that we wanted to make a bigger sandcastle. So Mr. Farmer Brown says, oh, okay, boys. So he walked on around a little bit, and he talked to some more boys and girls, and he came back over to Mrs. Farmer Brown and Mrs. Piggy, and he says, ladies, he said, I think that there is somebody here that is trying to destroy the boys and girls' castles. He does. So they said, how many boys and girls' castles has been destroyed? And he says, almost everybody's except one person.
Uh-oh. One person.
And who was that one person, you ask?
Who was it?
The little boys over there that Mama Piggy was watching. His sandcastle had never been destroyed. So they got together, and they decided what they were going to do was they were going to take turns. Mama Piggy, Mrs. Farmer Brown, and Mr. Farmer Brown was going to set up all night long.
Ooh.
They were going to take turns. And from 6 o'clock to 12 o'clock, midnight, Mrs. Piggy was going to sit with Farmer Brown's binoculars out the window, and she was going to look with the binoculars to see if there was anybody out on the beach. And Mrs. Farmer Brown said, well, I'll take the next watch. And Mr. Farmer Brown says, no, I want you to get some good sleep, because you're going to get up early in the morning and you're going to make a big breakfast. And we're going to take that big breakfast down on the beach. And any of the boys and girls that come early can join us for breakfast. Because they had heard people talking, and the boys and girls decided to get up real early tomorrow, just in case they had to, build something that somebody knocked down again. So Mr. Farmer Brown says, I will watch with the binoculars from midnight to 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. And then we will go down with our breakfast. And Mama Piggy, you can get up at 4 o'clock and have breakfast ready by 5. And she says, okay. So Mrs. Piggy sat there, oh my gosh, from 6 o'clock at night until 12 midnight, and she didn't see anybody down at the sandcastles. And she thought, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not the little boy next to us. Something, I don't know, something. So Mr. Farmer Brown comes, and he says, okay, you go to bed now, Mommy Piggy. You can get 6 hours of sleep. I'll wake you up when it's 5 o'clock. And she says, oh, thank you, thank you. So she goes in, she lays down in her bed. And Mr. Farmer Brown sits down in the chair out in the balcony, and he gets his binoculars, and he's looking around, and he's looking around, and he's looking around. And so, all of a sudden, he sees a shadow.
Ooh.
And the shadow comes, creeping up, creeping up, creeping up. And guess who it was? It was the little boy next door that they thought it might be. But you know what? He sat down by his sandcastle, and he was guarding his sandcastle. Apparently, the reason why his sandcastle had never been damaged, he had come out every night to guard his castle.
Wow.
Because this wasn't his first year at the contest. So something must have happened to him once before. And so he said, from now on, I'm going to guard every night. And that's what he was doing. So then when Mr. Farmer Brown had asked him that morning, or that afternoon rather, had he had any damage, and he said no, well, now Mr. Farmer Brown says, oh, now I understand why he told me no. He's not the guilty one. Well, the next morning, all the boys and girls came down early to work on their sandcastle, and what do you think? Every sandcastle had some damage done to it, except the little boy. And Mr. Farmer Brown is thinking, now if the little boy was there guarding his castle, why did he not see anybody doing damage? Something is wrong somewhere. Boys and girls, to be continued. Yes, we have to close now. Bye.